All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone. So today, welcome to today's webinar on finance automation. And today we are going to talk about how you can automate key business processes with SnapLogic. I'm Dhananjay Bapat, your host from the product marketing team at SnapLogic, and I'm joined here by a couple of experts. So we have Rajesh Yennam, who is Director of Analytics at Whitley Penn, and he's an expert in all things finance automation. He has previously worked at Cogenix, and he was also a product leader with Planful, which is a financial planning solution. Then we have Roger Stromkowski, who is a senior technical PMM at SnapLogic, and he's an expert, as you can expect, in all things SnapLogic. So he's going to walk us through how you can easily build finance automations using using the platform. And he will also provide a sneak preview into SnapGPT, which is our generative AI solution. So let's get started. So first up, I have this question for you. So what do these things have in common? The first one is cloud. The second one is storytelling. And the third one is AI. Any guesses? Well, finance professionals will need all these three things to be good in their roles and to deliver enhanced value for their businesses. And these stats from some of the research that was done in past few years support that. So in the 2022 report from Google Cloud on top cloud computing trends, they found out that 41% of organizations want to increase their cloud spend. And in addition to that, around 30% want to migrate their on-premises applications to the cloud. And around the same percentage of companies also want to move their workloads to the cloud. So you see continued movement of both data as well as workloads to the cloud. And finance applications are no different. And as you are moving more and more applications to the cloud, as more and more data is being moved to the cloud, Deloitte found out that in the future of automation reports, and it reported that around 92% of finance work will be more analytical by 2025. So that means finance teams will have to gather data from these various data sources and then extract insights with which they can move the business forward. And then from a most recently concluded Gartner CFO and Finance Executive Conference, the chair predicted that finance organizations who will upskill their teams on AI will be able to double their productivity in the next 3 years. So here you notice that they are not talking about an instant gain in productivity with AI. It's a learning curve. So as the technology matures, humans also have to find a way to work with these technologies. And only after some time, they will see the productivity gain. But your finance team won't be able to catch up with those trends if you don't solve the integration and automation problem. And given that for finance and accounting teams, ERP is the center of the universe, in my conversations with finance professionals, I found out that there are a number of challenges in integrating ERP with other systems of record. One common challenge is variable business processes. That means you have different business processes based on what your customers demand, but also the business processes change from the time it is initially communicated to an integration professional to the time it gets implemented and 6 months from that time. So that requires that you have to go back to that integration. You have to revisit it. And that might be in response to changing market conditions or It can also be due to different business requirements. And and finance professionals have significant challenges in making those changes because they are either blocked on resources and they also don't have the skills themselves to modify those integrations. The second key challenge is data silos. So as more and more companies move to the cloud, you might have smaller teams within accounting and finance org, which are using things like accounts payable system, such as Bill.com or Tipalti, or maybe sales compensation system, or maybe tax calculation system. So each of these teams have good customer experience from using these niche applications, but they're often working off of stale data. So it means the single source of truth hasn't propagated to the different data silos. So as data silos become numerous, there is greater need for integration. Then the third key challenge is integration fragmentation. Because ERP is the center of the universe, many of the smaller applications provide native integration with these common ERP systems, such as NetSuite or SAP or Oracle. And it might be tempting in the short term to actually adopt such a solution, but it creates challenges in the long term. So whenever that integration breaks, now you are dependent on a vendor to fix that integration for you in a timely manner, while the leadership is breathing down your neck. And another challenge that it creates is that you no longer have a single view of your ERP integrations. You'll have to go to different apps to see whether that integration is healthy or not, whether there are errors. And to debug things, you'll have to, again, go to different apps. And you can even get help from IT because they don't have the skills and expertise to fix integrations that was built in a vendor app. So now I want to take a quick pulse of the audience as to what your biggest roadblock is in adopting a finance automation solution. So here are the options, and we'll wait 20-30 seconds to have everyone provide their responses. Roger, if you can track the responses and maybe provide.
Yeah, votes are still coming in here, and it looks like we're getting some chat come in around the topic as well.
Okay.
Now, the leading one so far is the fourth one. So complex ERP applications and data structures complicate building and maintaining integrations.
Got it. Yeah.
Number 3 seems to be, number 3 and 2 are tied behind that.
Interesting. So yeah, both. So ERP complexity and then lack of in-house resources, as well as poor support from an app vendor, which seems like many of you guys are using as an integration option. So Rajesh, is it? Do you see similar stats from your experience working with customers?
Absolutely, Dhananjay. The biggest challenge that we see when we were talking to various customers, that spans across different industries and different sizes is like, hey, we want to reduce the close cycle, but the biggest challenge that we are running into is not able to access the data real time so that we have that level of visibility, because there are various systems that the data is available. Now, how can we get access to that data? How can we process that data, consolidate the data, and actually take the decisions that are data driven, right? So when you hear these things, I mean, it's the integration of various sources and also automating that entire process, right, is a key challenge that we want to overcome. Because if you want to reduce the close cycle, I mean, you got to have a technology that supports integrating various sources and being able to automate that entire process end to end. And that's exactly what we did for various customers. And I do have a couple of use cases that I'm going to touch base. But it's good, to get the validation,
Right.
from the webinar as well. I mean, to answer your question, yeah, that's exactly what we see almost on a daily basis, working with various customers.
Great. Okay. All right. So there is a clear need for the finance teams to be more nimble and more data driven so that they can respond well to any external conditions or any business changes. And for that, you need to break data silos. And as Rajesh mentioned, automate business processes so that you're not doing things manually. And SnapLogic as a platform empowers you to do that. So a number of customers across different industries use SnapLogic to automate finance business processes. And here are some common use cases that SnapLogic empowers. So the first one is quote to cash. So that's your integration between the CRM system and then the ERP system. So that involves syncing your product catalog. Then once your prospect turns into a customer, you want to sync that account information with the ERP system. And then finally, when you want to issue the quote or turn the quote into invoice, you start the quote to cash process. So quote is turned into an invoice, sent out to the customer, and then you get paid out in cash. Then the second key use case is procure to pay. So invoices generated from the ERP side, and then the payment is made with systems like Coupa or SAP Ariba. And then that'll work both ways. So either you are generating invoices for your customers, or maybe a vendor that you work with are generating invoices for you to pay. Then the third one is employee expense management. So your employees might be incurring some expenses when they travel, go to conferences, do customer visits, and you'll record those expenses via an expense management tool like Expensify or SAP Concur. Once that expense is approved, that is then recorded in the ERP system, and then the payments go out via something like ADP, it's the payroll software. And then another key use case is the financial planning use case, where you are trying to get data from all the different systems of record. So you have assets, liabilities, cash flows from ERP to your expenses. So your headcount expense from the HCM system like Workday, or maybe your other expenses from your expense management system like Coupa. And then you also want to look at how does your opportunities pipeline look so that you can allocate resources appropriately for the highest ROI for the business. And here you're putting all of that data into a financial planning software like Anaplan or Planful. So another poll question for you. So you have seen these common business processes that you can automate. From your perspective, what is the biggest impact of automation on your team? And automation can help in many ways. So please provide your input as to what is the biggest impact for your team. And again, we'll wait around 30 seconds.
Ooh, the first one just took a pretty big jump ahead, followed by the fourth one.
Yeah.
Yes, Roger. And again, what we see is, when you think about automation, you want to think about having that time back to do more, strategic work. Because if you're stuck on, managing the tactical aspects, then you don't really have time to actually analyze and impact the organization in a much more, strategic way. So automation is where, getting that time back is a key factor whenever you think of automation.
It's interesting you mentioned. Sorry, Dhananjay, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It's interesting, Rajesh, you bring up the strategic because the first and fourth one's just tied. So reducing manual data entry, and then being able to focus on strategic are now tied. So those two are coupling together nicely.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and from my conversations as well, I mean, I was actually very shocked to see amount of manual data entry that the teams have to do. And sometimes they resort to the manual data entry because they're getting a lot of ad hoc files from either the customers or the vendors, and the automation sometimes just doesn't help. And I think there is definitely more need, more things that we can do on the integration platform side to reduce that manual data entry.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as the nature of the role, whenever you think about Office of Finance is evolving, and it's more focused, to be strategic in nature
Right.
versus historically, it's been about, hey, let's make sure that the books are tied, right? You get paid, you are able to reconcile, you do all those manual things. But now the role is actually evolving, whereas CFO or Office of Finance is front and actually driving the entire organization towards that
Right.
strategic initiatives. And obviously, they need to take those decisions that are driven by the data.
Right. Great point. All right. So to be driven by the data, SnapLogic really provides you with a platform with which you can build integration so that you can be more data driven. And SnapLogic is an AI powered integration platform that is secure and scalable. So you can choose where you want to do the integrations, where you want to do it in cloud or behind your firewall on premises. We adhere to all the security standards. So we are compliant with SOC 1 Type 2, SOC 2 Type 2, as well as SOC 3. And we process data for large enterprises across different industries, from high tech, healthcare, pharma, financial services, retail, manufacturing, higher ed, you name it. We have a customer for it. And we today process around 5 trillion documents. So these are JSON documents per month. And that number is growing exponentially. So we see that from the amount of data that the customers are moving, there is definitely more and more data that's to be moved across applications or different data stores. And when you talk about a finance automation, you want to have a platform that is reliable. And SnapLogic provides an integration platform. So we do monthly releases, we do quarterly runtime updates, and all of this happens with zero downtime to you. So that means all your integrations will keep running. And for the critical integrations, we also provide an ultra low latency mode so that you get quick sub-second response time, and those integrations are also always on. Additionally, SnapLogic has always focused on improving the end user productivity. So we have a number of features with which we provide a faster time to value. And Roger will showcase some of those features when he does a demo. And there are things like data preview. So you can preview data as you're building the pipeline, and not just one record, but you can see up to 200 records at a time. We also do automatic data validation so that you can do iterative pipeline development quickly using the SnapLogic platform. And there are some additional features like schema on read that saves you significant amount of time when you're building integration. And then here are some solutions specifically for finance automation. So we have a number of snapbacks for ERP systems. So regardless of the ERP system that you use, we likely have a connectivity or a pre-built snapback for it. Starting with SAP ECC, which is a legacy system, to their modern ones like SAP S/4HANA, both on-premises and the cloud version. NetSuite we support with the SOAP API, as well as the REST API, which is coming soon. Microsoft Dynamics AX, which is the legacy one on premises, to the modern one, which is Dynamics 365 Finance and SCM. And we also provide support for SMB-focused Business Central. We also have Workday financial support via both SOAP and REST APIs, and then Exact Online, which is an accounting system. So we have a snapback for that. And support for Oracle ERP Cloud is coming pretty soon. And even if you don't see your ERP system here, you can still connect to it using our HTTP client, SOAP, and OpenAPI snaps. And then for all these connectors, we provide CRUD functionality, so ability to create objects, read, update, or delete them. And then for specific endpoints, we have some additional snaps, such as NetSuite RESTlets, or maybe it's bulk import or an export for finance and SCM. Another feature of the platform that helps improve the productivity are the finance automation patterns. So these are the pipeline templates which are available inside the product. And when you search for, so you can search by specific keyword like code to cash, or you can search by specific endpoint. And when you double click on this tile, you will get more details on what that pipeline template is. What does it do? How do you operationalize it? And then with a single click, you can import that into your own environment. And after that is imported, you can modify it based on your specific needs and then operationalize it. So it's a great way for you to accelerate your integration projects. And many of these patterns we use even for the Snap GPT that is again coming up in the demo portion today. Now I know that in the audience we have maybe two types of personas here. So we might have we have some folks from the accounting and finance teams, and there are some folks from the IT teams. And I know that you are looking at an integration platform for your specific needs. And for accounting and finance professionals, what SnapLogic provides is the ability to create custom integrations beyond what native integrations provide. So when I say native integrations, I'm referring to the integrations that various vendors provide with the ERP system. And those are often generic in nature. If you want to do any kind of customization, you can't do that. Additionally, we also help you grow with your needs. So you can start off with a simple integration and then make it more complex as your needs evolve. In case of native integrations, they are pretty much static. Additionally, you also get an improved SLA. So that means you can do break fixes faster. You can also do faster book closing and accurate and faster reporting for your leadership team. And more importantly, it reduces manual effort and manual data entry that many of you are struggling with, and frees up time for the strategic initiatives. Then for the IT pros, SnapLogic provides a single platform to consolidate all your application integrations, as well as your data integrations and API management. And then for app integrations, you are not just automating finance processes, but also employee onboarding and offboarding, or whether those are sales and marketing automations or product automations, you name it. We can do it on the SnapLogic platform. And then when you bring everything under one roof, you get unified observability. So that means a single place, a single dashboard where you can see the state of your integrations. You see the health of your underlying resources. You can easily double click into things when you see a problem area so that you can find the root cause quickly. And also whenever a new project comes in, because obviously you have variable or constantly evolving integrations, you can quickly respond to those requests because now you have some existing integration resources, whether those are your in-house resources or a partner that you work with closely. So with that, I will hand it over to Rajesh, who will talk about how they are using SnapLogic at Whitley Penn to accelerate value for customers. Rajesh?
Yeah. Thanks, Dhananjay. So thanks everyone for joining. This is Rajesh. I'm the practice director at Whitley Penn. So we'll highlight, our journey and the delivery methodology, and I'll also touch base on a couple of customer case studies. But happy to take any questions and work with you to get this going. Okay, so if you look at our journey started back in 2014. It's primarily around being an advisory for the enterprise performance management, working closely with the office of CFO. In that process, we built the partnership with technology companies and also with FP&A solution platforms, primarily with the motivation of providing value to the organization of finance. And most recently, we have joined Whitley Penn. Whitley Penn is a full service accounting firm that provides services for tax, audit, and consulting services for both accounting and finance organizations. And it has been consistently recognized as one of the top 100 firms in the US. Now, we will be providing all our services under Whitley Penn. Our vision, again, as I said, is focused on the finance transformation. So it is about leveraging the modern technology to transform the finance organization to be more nimble and more agile by automating various different tasks that we see almost on a regular basis. And if we look at our delivery methodology, the key focus is on delivering value to our clients, because many times we get into these engagements, the customer will have an idea on the problems and the challenges that they're going through, but we have to really drill down and ensure that we have a complete idea about the entire problem that they are going through, and then give them a map around how we can solve their problems with a solution mapping, so that they have a clear understanding on the ROI and the impact that we are going to deliver. In that process, it's about empathizing with our customers, so that we put ourselves in their shoes in terms of how they do their day-to-day jobs, so that we can have a clear solution for their problems. And when it comes to technology, as I said earlier, it's about leveraging the right technology for the right job. So we have a technical team that focuses on evaluating the industry leading iPaaS and FP&A solutions, so that we bring that expertise not just on the functional side, but also on the technology side to solve the customer problems and deliver value. Net, the key focus is to build that long-term partnership with our customers that is primarily focused on delivering value. So let me touch base on one of the use case. Again, when you think about quarter end close, right? It's a key business processes that every organization have to go through. Once you close a month or once you close a quarter, there are various different activities that the finance and accounting has to go through, right? Making sure that the GL entries are all recorded, right? The banks are reconciled, accounts payable, accounts receivable. I mean, you name it, right? You have to go through audit. You have to make sure that the tax compliance, security, right? So when you look at all these different activities, this close cycle will take a lot of time and effort. Now, what we are promoting, and when it comes to working with our customers, is to have a continuous close process, so that you're not really waiting for the month end to start the close activity process. But if you really on a mission to close the books on a continuous basis, what you're going to get is that time back to focus on the strategic initiatives. But if you want to have that continuous close, the biggest challenge, when working with various customers that we see is the ability to extract the data from various systems, right? Because when you think about an organization, you have data in ERP, you have data in HRIS, you have data in on-prem databases. Now, how do you consolidate? How do you collect the data? How do you integrate the data? How do you automate the data? These are the questions that we have to answer. And that's exactly where platforms like SnapLogic will make a significant difference. And with this customer, where we were able to reduce the close cycle primarily from, when it comes to extracting the data, was like from 1 week to 2 days. Now the finance team have that time back to focus more on the strategic initiatives. We were able to integrate 20 plus different applications because they have a lot of native ERP systems that are deployed. As they were acquiring a lot of companies, they need one common platform where they can look into the financials and try to close the books. Now, in that process, you have to build a common chart of accounts and do a lot of data transformation so that we can extract the data, transform the data, and then load the data so that the organizations can make the decisions based on that data. So again, if you need any more details on this specific use case, we are happy to work with you and also show you a demo that resembles in terms of what exactly we did. Next use case is a little different, but in this case, especially when you're working on a plan or a budget, it is very important that you understand where you stand in terms of your spend and in terms of your revenue compared to your budget versus your actuals. Having that level of information almost on a regular basis will be very helpful to make any decisions. Now, the organization that we were working, they never had access to the actuals data so that they can compare that with the budgets. Now there are 30 plus budget owners that are involved when it comes to managing their spend, and also few other budget owners looking into the revenue. Now they were all working in silos. They had a plan. They were just making sure that they were making a lot of the decisions based on the gut. I mean, they were very good in that process. But now, when we walk in, we completely analyzed, their process, the different systems that we have to integrate, and we gave them that visibility so that they can now track how the spend when it comes to comparing with their actuals, how the revenue is when it comes to, what they have forecasted. Now, that level of visibility was a game changer for this organization because all of their budget owners are now collaborating on one platform and have that visibility which they never had before. Now, if we look at the technology aspect here, again, SnapLogic, when it comes to extracting the data from various sources, and in this case, it was NetSuite, for various different ERPs. The CRM data was in Salesforce, expenses was in Expensify, and the people data, and again, this is HRIS, was in ADP. Now, all of a sudden, you have various data sources. And when it comes to budget owners were in IT, budget owners were in marketing, budget owners were in manufacturing, supply chain, customer support, right? Various teams, various sources, completely disconnected. Now, the finance transformation that I was mentioning is about how can you bring these various sources together so that they are connected? How can you bring these teams together so that they are collaborating on one single platform and making those decisions that are data driven? That's the finance transformation that we were able to accomplish with this organization. Okay.
Great.
I know.
I think these are great
Yeah.
stories, and thank you for sharing, Rajesh.
Sure, Dhananjay. I want to take a pause and see if there are any questions, or if you are doing Q&A in the end, that's fine. But again, as I said, I mean, we have various customers that we have been working across different verticals and different sizes, and we do provide complete end-to-end services in terms of master data quality management, finance transformations, what have you, integrating various sources and automating that entire process, right? Even if a client wants an advisory services. So happy to chat outside of this webinar as well. Back to you, Dhananjay.
All right. Thank you. And yeah, please, if you have any questions, please put it in the Q&A tab that you see, and we'll take them as we go, or otherwise we'll also we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. So one final survey question. So as you are thinking of kicking off the finance automation process, or maybe you have already done so, what is the most time-consuming process that you would like to start off with first? Is it quote to cash, or procure to pay, or maybe month-end close or quarter-end close, or maybe just consolidating data for financial reporting or planning? So please provide your input, and again, we'll give you guys 20 20 to 30 seconds.
This is actually an interesting question because we see almost all of these when working with various customers. Automating, the close process, right? Quote to cash, procure to pay, or consolidation of various sources so that they have the visibility of the P&L, the cash flow and the balance sheet.
Right.
Yeah.
So Roger, what is the verdict?
Still waiting on votes to come in. I know we had one come in via chat for number 4, so consolidating data for financial reporting and planning.
Okay. All right, maybe so we'll wait 10 more seconds and just go to the demo section.
Sounds good.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the consolidating data for financial reporting and planning is standing out as a clear winner here.
Right. Yeah, I think it kind of logically makes sense because you have to get data from so many sources, and it just like pulling data and pulling the right data, doing it on a timely basis. I think it's so critical, right? So, and that's definitely time consuming. All right. So with
Absolutely.
that, we'll move to the demo section of this presentation. So let me exit out of the screen share so that Roger, you can share your screen.
Perfect. Yeah, and I'm just going to stay in stage mode, I think, here for a minute or two while I do some kind of quick introduction, but then we'll go to the screen. So again, hello, everybody. My name is Roger Shimkowski. Been with SnapLogic for a little over 5 years now, I think, in various roles, all technical, starting with tech support and then sales engineering. So kind of been around the block. But what I want to talk about today and sort of dig into is the quote to cash process. It's a common one that we see with our customers. Rajesh, I'm sure you probably are familiar with this too. And it looks different for every business. And so what we're going to do today is just sort of take a little bit of a look at it from a perspective of account sync. So if you're not familiar with quote to cash or where this would fit in, really the idea is we're trying to go from the late stage of a sales process, right? Your sales team has nurtured this client, they've met with them, they've done demos, they might have done a POC, and we've reached that point where the prospect is ready to hear and see what it would cost to become one of your customers, essentially. And the end goal of that, or the end goal of the automation integration quote to cash, is essentially to mark them as a customer and then deliver the product or service and then receive the cash and recognize that for your business. So the account sync piece of it, right, is typically going from CRM to ERP, as one of them might be CRM to ERP to a cash receivable. And I chuckle a little bit because I know earlier in the chat I saw a comment around, some people think Salesforce is our ERP system. So Salesforce is probably the most common one where we see that sales relationship building. I think HubSpot's probably another big one that everybody's familiar with, right? So anyway, all of that said, right, what we're going to do is take a look at the account sync piece of this. So I am going to share my screen right here. And I have multiple tabs so we can kind of go through things a little bit differently. So what we're looking at right now is SnapLogic. We have different pods, and I get into this simply because there was also a question around, do we have UAT? And I'm not sure if this shows you my URL right now, but our primary pod where all of our customers reside is called our Elastic pod. And of course, it's segregated for security, right? But we also have a UAT. So if you can't see my URL, it would just, instead of being elastic.snaplogic, it would be uat.elastic.snaplogic. And that's essentially a pre-release environment. So I just wanted to touch on that real quick since it came up in chat. Now, this is SnapLogic where your team lands when they're coming to start integrating. And so they have this canvas, which you would expect of any tool that's about to start helping you move a little bit faster. And then the building blocks, as you would probably guess from our name, are going to be snaps. So on the left-hand side here, we see our asset palette. And this is where I can start taking a look at those. So for example, if I want to look at Salesforce snaps and I want to start working with this, all I have to do is drag it out onto the canvas. You'll immediately see this new pane wizard, you might call it, to kind of walk you through things. where I can choose an account that already exists, or I could create a new one. So just for the sake of showing off some of the things that Dhananjay mentioned, we're going to go ahead and choose a working account here. Now, when I save this, Dhananjay mentioned that auto validation. So all I've done is select an account. We've left it up on the default one here. And of course, I choose an account that's not working, but it still gives me the opportunity to show you that the auto validation allows you to start seeing what's going on when you're trying to work with something. All right. And then when you want to add the next step into an integration, so say, for example, I wanted to now take some business logic, or I think as what came up in one of those poll questions was the complexity of some ERP data systems, right? All I have to do is drag out my second snap, and then I'm able to just connect them. And now I would be able to flow the documents that come from Salesforce into some other snaps for business logic, and then ultimately into an ERP. All right, I'm just going to pause and flip back over and see if there's any questions as I'm going through this. It looks like we're okay. All right. DJ, actually, will you interrupt me if something comes up that's relevant to the perfect?
Definitely.
Perfect. Thank you. That way I'll just focus on my tab here. All right. So that's kind of the basics of building what we would call a pipeline, right? So you chain snaps together, you build a pipeline. Automation integration, right, goes by several different names. So on the left-hand side of my asset palette, you can see I have snaps, I have pipelines. This is where I would store my in-progress or completed assets. And then the other thing I can do is turn them into patterns. So if I have a pipeline that works fairly well, so maybe you're a business with multiple departments selling different things, right? Maybe in one area it's lumber, timber, or services, and another it's steel and something else. Maybe they do things a little differently, but they use similar systems. I can take and build my pipeline into a pattern. It does things like remove accounts. That way the other department's not accidentally using my information. But it gives them a framework that they can start with. And that's another way that SnapLogic can help you achieve these goals faster and start spreading sort of the integration knowledge among your company. The last part here isn't necessarily a building block, but we do frequently see it used as one, which is to turn it into an API. So it's very nice to have a scheduled integration, say run this batch job and pull over all my accounts at 8 a.m. It might also be different to, for example, with Salesforce, you can do triggers. So we could say when an opportunity hits a closed won state, I want you to call SnapLogic and start that process automatically. Now you don't have to worry about scheduling and batching. You've simplified it and you've made it a lot faster for the business. Okay. So again, these are the basics. A couple other things from the SnapLogic perspective is up top, you'll see that there are 3 tabs, Designer, Manager, Dashboard. So just to talk about these quickly, Manager is where your team is going to separate their assets. So is this a finance integration? Is it a sales integration? Is it a marketing integration? This is also where your administrators can come in and decide things like, if you work in a business with sensitive data, do I want to turn off data preview? Maybe that's not something I want my developers to see. So there's things like that, SSO configuration, all of that that's available in the Manager tab. And then the dashboard, which I'm going to click on quickly here, is a way to see integrations that are actually executing and get a health status of your environment. So the first thing that we can see when we come over here is just the status of what we would call snapplexes. These are where the data executes. I think from a security perspective, Dhananjay mentioned earlier that we have the ability to deploy these execution containers in your network, right? So if you are in finances or if you are in medical, anything with sensitive type data, it is possible to keep all of the actual data processing in your networks, clouds, whatever it may be, instead of coming through SnapLogic. And then on the pipeline tab, this is where I can actually get a sense of what's going on. Of course, I'm in a demo organization, which means we get to see a whole bunch of red, but this is always very nice because then I can kind of show how easy it is to start figuring out what's going on with your environment. And we can see things like how long it took, how many documents moved, who owns it, what type of kickoff process it was. There's a lot of information here at a glance. All right. So I'm going to have
Roger, there is one question if you go back to Designer. So the question was,
perfect.
Can we use a webhook in the first snap? So essentially the question around real-time integrations.
Yes. So it's an interesting question. So you can actually push data to SnapLogic. So for example, if we take this process here, the left-hand side of this snap, the Salesforce read is closed. So what that means is when you kick it off, it's got to get all of its data from that connection. If I were to come in here and add an input, And now I want to come back over and set up, say, a where clause, and I would parameterize this, and I would say something like account, right, is, and I'm rough guessing this. I'm not sure on exactly what Salesforce's setup would be. And then I would reference a variable. So I might say if it's coming in via API, it's going to be in the body of a request, right? It might be body.account. So now what I've done is I've parameterized it and I've set it up so that it can be kicked off via a API call based, and then we would take incoming information and use that as part of the request. So I believe that answers the question. I feel like there's a subcategory of that too around the low latency concept. So when you have it set up as an API, the pipeline's not always running. It's substantiated and executed in its own sort of bubble, if you will, from a sort of security or isolation perspective. Once the data comes in, Ultra, which I think, Dhananjay, you talked about a little bit, is an always running pipeline. And it is designed for situations like this where you're looking for sub-second response time because of that. So it can take in a message immediately, right? So if we want to do every closed won opportunity just immediately hits that Ultra pipeline, you can usually get the system downwards into something like NetSuite, right, in just a few seconds.
Yeah, and I'll also add that we support, for example, certain endpoints like Salesforce. We support platform events. So it means you can define an event inside Salesforce, and we have a snap for that. So you can trigger a pipeline based on a certain event that is happening on the Salesforce side.
Perfect. Awesome. Let me know if anything else comes up, and
yeah, go ahead.
Hopefully everybody missed the show that just occurred with my water bottles. So let me go ahead and move on, right? Unless there's any other questions, just have me come back. But I want to hop over to something more relevant to quote to cash and what we were talking about, and show what a little bit of a larger integration looks like. So for this particular one, I'm going to go ahead and actually manually validate this. So up in this upper right-hand corner, I'm going to click this V that's inside the gear. Now, one thing I did not talk about is you'll notice that there's different colored snaps, and what they do does matter. The color of the snap and sort of the shape of the snap is an indicator for us. So these green snaps are going to be read snaps. So they're you think of it as polling data. The blue snaps are transformation, right? Or business logic. What are we doing to the data midstream after we read it and before we write it? And then you'll see these diamonds. So this is essentially a flow. Do we need to move, US data down one branch and EMEA data down another branch? Or in the case of a quote to cash between Salesforce and NetSuite, what we've done is we're reading the Salesforce account. Then we're doing a NetSuite search before we make an assumption that the account exists or doesn't exist. We're going to do a search. And what that allows us to do is route based on whether or not the account exists, and handle that just a little bit differently, bring those two streams back together. And then we would do an upsert into NetSuite. And if anybody's not familiar with a NetSuite upsert, it's an insert and update operation combined into one. So it just allows us to provide the information and know that if the account doesn't exist, it will create it. If it doesn't exist, we'll update it. So whether your quote to cash process is focused on new logos or new business or expansions, this single integration could cover both essentially. And then the final part is to come back to Salesforce and then write that. So we close the loop. Right now we can say, okay, this closed one opportunity or quote, whatever it might be, has made it all the way into NetSuite, and we can come back to Salesforce and we confirm when it was written, write things along those lines. One other feature I want to show that I think helps sort of highlight this and also just covers what I talk about. If I expand my tools here and hit this pen with the 5, I can also open up notes, right? So these are just natural language ways for us to document what's going on in a pipeline, steps for a new colleague, anything like that. All right. Dhananjay, anything else on Q&A side? If not, I'm going to go do the Snap GPT real quick, and I'm watching time, so I want to make sure we have.
Yeah, no, I don't see anything. Any other questions?
Okay, perfect. All right, so I do need to stop sharing that tab, and now I'm going to sort of tab gamble here a little bit because I have several with similar names. So I'm going to, this is the right one, I believe. Okay, perfect. So I'm in a different environment now. It looks very similar, but you will notice in the upper left corner, this is Snap Labs. So the quickest way that I can explain this is that Snap Labs is a way for SnapLogic to start allowing our customers and partners to test functionality or features that are not available yet, publicly speaking, in Elastic, and they may or may not get into production necessarily. Now, AI, we know everybody's going to be moving towards, so this is our essentially attempt at it. So what I want to do is just take a quick shot at what it looks like to do this inside of SnapGPT. Now, as this is running, I'm going to give a little bit of background. So I did copy paste, right? So we're just going to run create a pipeline that syncs my Salesforce accounts to NetSuite, then back to Salesforce. There's a lot of ways to word this. For anybody who's been playing with ChatGPT on their own or any other sort of generative AI, you know that it's always learning, which means that things can change. It's sort of I like to think of it as the Forrest Gump moment, right? Life is like a box of chocolates, so we never know what we're going to get. In this case, we can see that SnapLogic comes back with two options, right? So the first one, high glance, is essentially a bi-directional account sync. So we're going from Salesforce to NetSuite and NetSuite to Salesforce at the same time. If you want to treat Salesforce as a source of truth, we would want to choose the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this one, and now it just gives us a chance to take a look, and I'm going to hit this. Now, while this is importing, some other things I want to talk about real quick. When a customer enters a prompt in SnapGPT, from a security standpoint, I just want to emphasize that we are not taking your metadata or your accounts or anything like that and passing it through when we talk to ChatGPT. What we take is your prompt. We take some pipelines from our pipeline catalog, and then we take some snippets from our documentation. We sort of enhance and flush out the prompt a little bit further based on the keywords in the prompt, and then we pass that over to ChatGPT. All right, so from a security standpoint, again, just focusing on the fact that we're not sending customer metadata or accounts or anything like that over. It's just high-level, unfilled out data. Okay, so now we get this pipeline back. We're going through the import process. Important distinction that SnapGPT does highlight fields that it has attempted to configure with you. Of course, I've done this before, so we're going to overwrite. I'm not actually going to go through configuring this to work at the moment, just given the amount of time that we have left. So what I want to do, though, is just sort of show how similar this pipeline may look to the one that I did before, and also sort of dig into some of these fields to start taking a look at and demonstrate the fact that SnapGPT has actually given me a framework of possible conditional statements I might want to look at, possible routing. So maybe there's a condition in which I want to route error documents to a file instead. And then I can just keep coming through here and looking. Now, earlier in the chat, there was this mention of ERP complex data structures, right? And so I think this one is a fairly significant impact in that conversation, because you can see right here that SnapLogic and SnapGPT have come together to essentially provide a guide on where your Salesforce data would need to go to match into NetSuite, right? So this is sort of a first attempt at making this go through, but now your team's able to come in and just take a look at all of the information and see how it works. So I want to pause there, see if there's any other questions. If not, I know we're kind of down to the final 7 minutes. So
yeah, we have a couple of non-SnapGPT questions. So I think you can close this out and then we'll look at the questions.
Okay, sounds good. So let me get out of that. All right, let's see. Is there a Snap or another easy way to convert XML to JSON for legacy APIs? Yes, there is. So let me just quickly share. And again, I'm on tab Gamble here, so perfect. It's always nice when you leave up a pipeline like this. It makes it a lot easier to find. So let me get rid of these two here and just quickly show. So we have formatter snaps. And so this is where we would go JSON or XML. So depending on what's coming in, and there's also parse, right? So I have an XML parser. Yeah, it's possible to do some artwork with the pipelines if you need to kind of make them. It always reminds me of like Snake on the old like TI calculators when I was in school. But you can change the shape of them so it doesn't have to strictly be left or right. But yeah, there are parsers and formatters to help you move those data types across. All right. Every app we use other than NetSuite will require us to build our own snaps. Every app we use. So there's a question around, it sounds like the question of whether or not we need to build, and I don't think that's necessarily true. If I come back in here and I open this up, SnapLogic has, and I think Dhananjay had a slide around it, right? Over 700 different ones. So just depending on what you're trying to do, there's a lot. If you're working with files, again, file types, if you're encrypting or decrypting on the fly, there's all kinds of information on here, right? If you're working with Snowflake, everything's here. And the HTTP client, file reader, SOAP execute, and there's some other ones that are probably escaping my mind at the moment. They're all designed for helping you in those situations where we don't necessarily have one available yet. It is possible to work with our team or a partner to actually get a custom snap built for you as well.
Yeah, but I think the question here is how can SnapGPT leverage those? So if a customer has to connect via REST to an endpoint, like can SnapGPT leverage that?
Yes. Yeah. So that's a really good question. And we have a beginner's guide in our community, which might be a really good link to share here. In it, there are some, I'm actually going to look for it while I talk here. So in it, there are some examples, and one of them is actually a example of grabbing a URL from, I think it's the European Central Bank. And kind of the point is that, yes, SnapGPT can go out and help grab some information from third-party documentation, right? Now, if anybody's familiar with ChatGPT, which is sitting behind SnapGPT, one of the things is that ChatGPT 3.5 stopped its education, if you will, in September of 2021. So what that means is if you were to ask a SnapGPT or ChatGPT, could you write me a pipeline that works with Salesforce's 2023 API? Right? It's not gonna have the ability to go and grab that information. But if it was an API that had documentation for a couple of years ago, be okay. So solution to that is ChatGPT 4, excuse me, which we are working on. It's not something we are, leaving behind, right? It's something we're diligently working on and moving forward with our partner on ChatGPT. Dhananjay, do you feel that helps flush it out? Or Rajesh, anything you want to add to it too?
No, I think it's already at the top of the hour. We can take these questions offline.
Yeah. So let me kind of wrap up, and thank you, Roger, for a great demo on the code to catch as well as SnapGPT. So let me quickly wrap up. Okay. All right. So in summary, for all of you finance professionals as well as IT folks who are working with finance teams, there's a need to adopt finance automation so that you can make your teams more nimble and data-driven. And there is also a need to up-level with AI skills. And you need to start now so that you can realize significant productivity gains in near future. And also, when you're thinking of moving away from that manual data entry, you need to pick an automation platform that is going to help you in the long term and not just not something that will be a short-term fix. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Here are some resources for you. All of them are available on our website. So there is a finance automation ebook, as well as a couple of blogs that we have created based on our conversations with the finance teams. And there is one from Rajesh here as well. So I want to thank you, everyone. And I know we are at the top of the hour. So if you want any more information, if you want a demo of how you can leverage SnapLogic for finance automation, please go to snaplogic.com and you can reach out to the speakers on LinkedIn if you need additional help. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you on the next webinar.